Hello, everybody. This is Scott Hudspeth with Agent Mastermind. Super excited to have everybody here. Hope everybody had an amazing long holiday. I am super excited. Never before have we had a VA ninja expert, let alone a VA person, period. And John, just so you know, I've never had or have never done a VA class ever in the 7.5 years we've been doing Agent Mastermind. So I'm super excited to have you on. Not only that, I'm super excited to have you bring so much knowledge to the industry, and most importantly, help our veterans to get into home ownership. It's just beyond exciting. So thank you for being here, man, and I can't wait to see what you have to share. I know that you always, every time you present, and you've been doing this forever, that you have blown minds and have, for our company, increased the amount of VA loans dramatically, which is helping so many more veterans, which is so awesome. So thanks for being here, man.
Well, thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and just so you guys know, obviously we can't give you CE credits for this webinar, but this presentation that he's going to give is CE certified in the state of Michigan. So very excited to bring you guys this class directly for real estate agents. And if you're in Michigan, you might be seeing this class for one of your CE classes. So super excited to have you here again, John.
Hey, thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. And welcome, folks. A little background about myself. This is my 45th year in the mortgage industry, doing VA loans. Actually, many years ago, a gentleman in San Diego, I live in San Diego, taught me how to do VA loans. The gentleman's name was Bill Hamill, a retired Navy captain, and his claim to fame is he's the father of Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker from Star Wars. And Bill he passed away. Yeah, great guy, absolutely great guy. Awesome. And but I have closed over 5,000 VA loans in my career, and it's very near and dear. I am a Vietnam vet myself, so the veteran program is very near and dear to my heart. So let's get started. That is my second passion. I've been a high school football official for 22 years, and that very well may explain why I'm talking to you about VA home loans as opposed to the finer arts of football officiating. They put that slide in there so you can see what I look like upright.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
The program was created in 1944 to assist the veterans coming back from World War II. The very first VA loan was in Washington, D.C. The loan amount was $2,000, and they guaranteed 50% of that, so they guaranteed $1,000. That home still stands in Washington, by the way. Let's go over some of the benefits. No down payment required up to county limits. That will change January 1st. They're not adding a down payment. They're doing away with county limits. The VA will be uncapped come January 1st of 2020. So if you have a 484-350 in your area, you could do a $700,000 no down. There's not going to be any cap in any area as long as you have an investor for it and they can qualify for it. So that will be effective January 1, 2020. No monthly mortgage insurance ever. Seller contributions up to 4% plus closing costs. So the normal standard closing costs don't go against the 4%. And we'll get into that a little bit later, some things you can do with that 4% that are just amazing.
Hey John, Maureen's asking on the uncapped. She says, when you say uncapped, a jumbo can be done. Like, so like $1.2 million VA loan. Does that qualify? Okay.
Can be done zero down. Correct. Right now,
unbelievable.
You can do one right now by putting down 25% of the amount above the county limit.
Got it.
So let's say you have a county limit of 484-350, and I have a sample in later on. You could buy a house for $584-350 with only $25,000 down, 25% of the difference. Okay. Gift funds are allowed. No minimum reserve requirements ever for VA. Some investors overlay it, but the VA doesn't. Veteran can use the entitlement multiple times. I've used mine 5 times. Fixed rate assumable loan. And there's a big advantage to realtors. It is a fixed rate assumable loan. You have somebody in a 3.5% VA, 4 years down the road, we're at 6.5% and they have to move. How much more is the fact that somebody can come in and assume that 3.5% worth to both you and your seller? And you don't have to be a veteran to assume it.
Really?
Yeah.
So if they have a current VA loan right now, if they have a current VA, is it a VA? So if they have a current VA and 5 years from now they got to move and they got a 3.5, somebody can assume the 3.5 and they don't have to be a veteran?
Correct.
Wow.
The
So
only
I mean, like,
if a veteran assumes it, they can assume the seller's entitlement too. But if a non-vet, that seller's entitlement is tied up in that loan until that loan pays off.
wow.
But it can be assumed by a non-vet.
Okay.
A veteran,
Amazing.
anybody that entered the military after September 7th of 1980 needs to have served 2 years to be eligible. If you served prior to 1980, it's 181 days, or 90 days if you're active duty right now during the Persian Gulf conflict during wartime. So a young guy goes in the military and he's eligible after 90 days. People in the military academies are eligible upon graduation. They consider that active duty time.
Let me ask you this, John. Let me ask you this, John. Sorry to interrupt. So Brett,
no problem.
He says that, hey, they still get their eligibility restored once the loan is assumed, I think. Would that be correct? If someone assumes the loan, do they get their eligibility restored?
If a veteran assumes the loan, they can get the eligibility restored.
Okay.
No, the eligibility stays with that until it pays off.
Got it. Okay.
Now, unmarried surviving spouse, a person whose death was considered service connected, that person's spouse is eligible for a VA loan for refinance or purchase. Spouses listed as POW MIA can use it one time for a purchase or a refinance. And certain members of Health and Human Services. This is something people don't know if they've never served in the military. Certain members are still eligible for VA loans. That would be like the doctors and nurses that work in the, let's say the federal prisons, in the infirmary in the federal prisons, or the doctors and nurses that go out on these natural disasters and help. If you recall the flooding in Houston and in Florida, all those medical personnel that went there were members of Health and Human Services. And there's one other. I do not have a VA disability, so if I were to pass away, my wife could do an IRRL, interest rate reduction refinance loan, on the house that we own together, as long as she was on the loan. She couldn't do a refinance or a cash out refinance or buy another house, but she could do an IRRL on the one that we bought together. So those are and of course, all active duty or veterans from Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, and Coast Guard, even though Coast Guard is part of Homeland Security and not Department of Defense, they are eligible for VA loans.
Here's a great question, John.
Yes. Yes.
My son serves in the Army National Guard, but has only served 3 years. He has to wait to 6 years, right?
Correct, unless he was deployed to the Persian Gulf. If he was deployed for 90 days, then he's eligible.
Okay. There you go, Patty. Thanks for the question. Appreciate it. And appreciate what your son is doing for our country.
Absolutely. Let's recap. No monthly mortgage insurance and 100% LTV. Well, purchase refinance, the rules have just changed. Ginnie Mae will no longer accept 100%, but they will do 90% cash out. Okay. As I said, VA has increased 2% in the last 2 years. Only still about 11% of the eligible veterans have used their benefit. So you folks in real estate, that's a marketplace that's 89% open.
Untapped. And just to clarify, just so nobody's freaking out, the amount of VA loans has increased 2%, not the rate. So I just wanted to make that very clear. So the amount of VA loans, yes, the amount of VA loans has increased 2% of the loans. So I just want to.
We wouldn't be doing very many VA loans at 11%.
No, that's right. That's right.
And the VA, I'll give you a little story. I had just closed a loan for the guy that's the commander for ROTC for the University of Washington. They've been friends of mine for 20 years, and he got transferred from San Diego up to Washington where he's going to retire. And he had already gone up there, so his wife and I were out to lunch. And like I said, we've been family friends for 20 years. And there was a realtor and his lenders sitting in the booth behind us. Well, the realtor was really happy he got his first VA borrower, and the lender proceeded to tell him, stay away from the VA loan. It is so complicated. VA is so tough to work with. Angie's sitting there and she looks at me and she says, uh-oh, because that burned right through my filter. So I got up and I said, I told the realtor, please do not deprive that veteran of the benefit he's earned. And I looked at the lender and said, you have no clue as to what you're talking about, because VA is not involved in this loan at all. The lender does everything. The lender originates it, the lender underwrites it, funds it, even issues the appraisal. The appraiser uploads his appraisal report, and the lender issues what's called a notice of value. And the VA doesn't even know there's a loan until the guarantee is issued, and the lender even issues the guarantee. So VA is not involved at all. If anybody ever tells you VA is so tough to work with, they don't know how to do VA loans, because the lender does everything. Hey,
John, two questions. Two questions coming in here. Maureen asked, if they aren't a vet, what do they show instead of a certificate of eligibility? I would assume to assume that loan.
No, they don't have to show anything. Anybody can assume it. They have to they have to put a credit package through the servicer. And there's no eligibility change if it's a non-vet. The eligibility of the seller stays on that house until that loan is paid off.
Got it. Derek is asking another question. What if a person is retired from the National Guard? Would they qualify for a VA loan?
Of course, if they retire from the National Guard, they put in at least 6 years. Okay. So if you're in the National Guard, you need to get a form. It's called an NGB 22. It's sort of the National Guard's version of a DD 214, and an NGB 23, which is a point statement that shows that they did at least 16 points a year for 6 years. And of course, a discharge.
Awesome.
Okay, this is the funding.
All right. Go ahead.
The funding fee is put on all VA loans to help the program survive. Unless you have a disability, the funding fee is then waived. So the first time use right now is 2.4. Reservist for reservists, 2.15 for regular, 3.3 for repeat user. Now, if you put 5% down, that 3.3 drops to 1.5. 10% down drops to 1.25. And if you're doing an EARL, which is called an interest rate reduction refinance loan, it's always a 0.5 point. Now, the funding fees January 1st will be going up a little bit. The 2.15 will become 2.3. Although the reservists at 2.4, they'll drop down to 2.3. There'll be no more differential between reservists and active duty. The 3.3 will go to 3.6. And if you put 5% down, instead of 1.5, it'll be 1.65. And
so just to clarify what John's talking about here, it's for our agents and maybe some lenders on the call. What he's talking about is VA veterans, when they do a loan for the first time, you'll see the first time column here. this is the fee that they have to pay. And this is financed in the loan, correct? They don't have to put this money down, but it's added
That
to the
is
loan or
always,
financed in the loan? Okay.
yeah, always. Now, the one thing with VA, with FHA, if you do a loan, the upfront MIP has to be either all financed or all cash. VA can mix and match from cash to seller credit to finance, whatever you want to do with it, you have the option.
Very nice. Okay. Excellent. So what you're saying here, the big thing is if I mean, John, and I'll ask you this question, does it really benefit the veteran to put down 5% just to lower from,
No.
Let's see.
No.
No, it doesn't really, does it? So like,
well, if you have a 3.3%, here's what I've always told somebody. Why bother putting down 5% to make it 1.5? Put down 3.3% and pay it in cash. You're putting down less.
There you go.
No funding fee then. If you have the cash,
right.
you don't want the 3.3 funding fee, just pay it in cash instead of putting 5% down.
And the
you
rates
get to
are so low right now.
Paid it in cash.
Yeah. And the rates are so good at I would rather see them put the money to like pay off credit cards or pay down.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everybody's situation is different.
Correct. Awesome. Let me see if there's any questions
Here's an
here.
example.
All right. Vivian's asking, does DTI play a part in the veterans loan?
A small part, but the veterans loan is more residual income than it is debt to income. The handbook in chapter 4, section 10 states that ratio is secondary to residual. So we routinely do loans in the 60s, 60 back-end ratios, as long as they have the required residual income. The VA loan is there to really help the veteran, and they will bend over backwards to assist a veteran just to make sure, though, that he is not put in harm's way. You don't want to put somebody into a loan they cannot afford. But if they can see any way that they'll make the payment, the VA will allow us to do the loan. Now here's
Lisa Roth. She says, I'm a vet and I'm allowing my ex-husband to assume my VA loan, but he is a veteran too, so I would get my eligibility back, which from
correct. You want to make sure.
Okay.
You want to make sure that when he puts that, when he puts in for an assumption that you want a substitution of entitlement. Make sure he tells the lender and gets his certificate of eligibility, or at least his DD-214, to that lender so they can get his certificate of eligibility and substitute the remaining entitlement, the entitlement used on that loan in his name, and then you'll be able to get restored because you'll be off the loan, not a title.
Awesome. All right. Here's a question from Dave. Sorry about all the questions. These are great questions.
Hey, I love it.
Me too. What's the VA funding fee cover for? What's the VA fee for cover?
Well, basically, it covers the program. It
covers the. Is it like, because I know VA is like foreclosures or administration and all that stuff, right? Funds, yeah.
But you also have the home loan guarantee program, that all the people that work in it, and it covers the entire program. And that's another thing. Everybody talks about this 100% program, how risky it is. For 21 consecutive years, it's had the lowest foreclosure rate of any institutionalized loan in the country.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing.
It really is, including the 20% down conventionals. It's had the lowest foreclosure rate. And the VA jumbos, it's incredible. The low, very low default rate on those. But here's the example I talked to you about before. 44,350 in Scott County. So sales price of 584,350. Subtract that from the county limit, 100,000, 25%, 25,000 down. Now, if he'd used it before, it's 95.7. He's got to put that money down, put the extra 0.7% down, and reduce the funding fee from 3.3 to 1.5. That's one time when it would make sense.
Okay.
So, and the same, if it was a $700,000 house, just subtract 44,350 from 700,000 times 25% of the difference. That's what your down payment would be. It's the best jumbo now. Before they uncap the loan limit, it's the best jumbo loan in existence
by far. And
what
it will
other
be after too, right? Right.
$484,350 with no down payment.
It doesn't exist.
It really doesn't. You're
right now. Yeah.
Yep. Now the veteran charges.
Here's a great question from Dave. From Dave, if you don't mind. What about clients that want to build? What about clients that want to build? I sell a lot of land, and we also build some custom homes. How will this work for land sales or construction loans?
Well, they get their construction loan, and then we'll do the VA as their permanent. We'll take them out of the construction loan with their VA.
All right, awesome. Here's another one from Reen. John mentioned some folks can qualify for a VA loan if certain industries, if not a vet. What do they use instead of in what? So how do they do that, or what would be
It's from Health and Human Services, and we get a statement of service from Health and Human Services, and the people have to have the equivalent rank of a naval officer, which would be the nurses and doctors. And they put that down what their equivalent rank would be and how long they've worked there. If they've worked there at least 2 years, they're eligible. It's just we treat it like they're active duty military.
All right. One more question. I'll let you cruise here.
No
what
problem.
Is the minimum amount that can be financed? What is the minimum amount that can be financed? Minimum.
Well, VA has no minimum. It's up to each investor what they will take as their minimum. But VA has zero minimum. VA will,
that's what I thought.
You buy a house for $10,000, VA will approve that, but I don't know if you're going to find many investors that will purchase that.
Right. Here's a good one too. There's some good ones coming up. I know
hey guys,
will do.
I love these questions because I could sit here for 2 hours and talk to you, and if I don't get to your question, I haven't done you any good. So please ask your questions.
Right. I know that VA will do land-owned manufactured homes, but do you know what the restrictions are?
They just have to be on a permanent foundation. They have to have the HUD certification recorded, and that's about it. There are no other restrictions.
Awesome.
You can have now with FHA and conventional Fannie Freddie, if it's been moved from one location to another, it's ineligible. That's not true with VA. You can move it from one location to another, as long as it's on a permanent foundation, it's still eligible.
Awesome. So it can be moved, and so if it's what is that thing where they do the title thing where I can't remember the name of it now. It's been too long. Where they a fixture affidavit of a fixture or something like that.
Yeah,
obviously that would
certification. Yeah. And then it goes from being a vehicle to real property.
Okay, correct. Okay, perfect. All right.
Okay, I know there are times that your sellers have gotten stuck with fees. Our industry for years was charging a 1% origination and then charging the fees to the seller. Well, that's not supposed to happen. The handbook states that 1% can be charged as reimbursement for the non-allowables. Well, now VA has said, instead of just charging the 1%, if we itemize those fees, the veteran can pay those non-allowables up to 1%. So if you have something 250, 260, they don't come to 1%. So if we itemize them, the veteran pays less than 1%, the seller pays nothing, everybody wins. Now, I want to talk about the seller contribution of 4%. Here's something that's absolutely amazing. Can use it for payment of funding fee. Now, remember, closing costs, normal closing costs do not go against the 4%. They can be paid over and above the 4%. But things that can be paid the 4%, the funding fee, payment of taxes, insurance, the impounds, temporary buy downs, and to pay off credit balances or judgments on behalf of the buyer. So the seller can actually pay off buyer's debt to help them qualify. Where else are you going to have?
Did you guys hear that? Did you guys hear that? The seller can help pay off the buyer's debt to qualify. That is huge.
Now,
huge.
Here's one.
As long as it's not more than 4%, correct? As long as it's not more than the 4%. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Now, think of this. How many times have you had something you actually had too much credit? And I've had those several times.
A lot.
So what do you do? You have to go back now and redisclose, and you're losing time. With VA, you don't. Because you can apply that to credit balances, apply it to a credit card, apply it to a funding fee if he has a funding fee, if he's got, and that's another thing about the funding fee. If you have a disability, and any disability, if you receive $1 from the VA in disability, the funding fee is waived. Whether it's first time or subsequent use, there's not a funding fee if you receive any disability compensation from the VA. And I've heard wild things like it's got to be 50% disabled or 40%. No, if you receive $1,
1%. $1. Okay.
$1.
No matter when or how.
No percentage.
Okay.
VA simply states if you receive any disability from the VA, the funding fee, you'll be funding fee exempt.
Here's one from Dorian. Does the property have to be a primary residence? Great question.
Yes. Primary residence only. No second homes, no investment.
Okay.
All right.
Is there, Janie says they also have year-built restrictions, don't they? Question mark.
Not like FHA. I believe it's after before 1987. VA doesn't have those restrictions.
Before 1987.
No, after. It's got to be
after 87. So if it's after 87,
or 87 with FHA, but VA doesn't have those restrictions. That's up to the appraiser. Now, here's something, guys. It's called the IRRL, Interest Rate Reduction Refinance Loan. That if we can improve the veterans rate by at least 0.5%, and they've been in it right around 7 months, we'll go ahead and automatically reduce their rate to the current rate. Now, here's where a lot of people I dealt with, I'd constantly get calls say, hey, can we finance the closing costs? Can we finance it? Well, no, you can't, not on a purchase. But you can bump the rate a little bit, get a lender credit for those fees, and then after 7 months, do an IRRL to reduce his rate. So what your borrower has done is basically rented his closing costs for 7 months. And if you got a borrower that doesn't have cash, that's a good way to get in, because the payment is next to nothing if you bump the rate a little bit to cover those costs. Their costs aren't that great. And
here's a great question for you that Donna has, and we'll go back to that in just a second. Donna says, how do you convince the seller to do that? And she's referring to pay the seller, pay something off or pay something of the buyers to get.
Well, if you have the borrower, if you have the seller agreeing to 4% seller contributions,
there's nothing to talk about, right?
There's nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
As long as
the lender. Okay.
Can apply.
So the lender can put that money anywhere. Okay.
Yeah. Well, the borrower can. The borrower will instruct the lender where that's to go. But yes, absolutely. That becomes the borrower's money.
Perfect.
But this IRRL can really help you if you have somebody that doesn't have the money right now but can qualify for the payment. It's a perfect way to get in without the cash for the closing costs.
So here's the cool part. So I don't know if you guys caught this right here. It says max 135% LTV with 620 credit. That means on an IRRL, they can refinance even though the value of their home isn't, they don't have to have equity in their home, more or less. They can
right. There's no appraisal. There's no appraisal done and no income verification on because the VA, they're making their payments at the higher payment, making their payments at the lower payment will be easier for them.
Awesome. Huge benefit.
And the funding fee is only a half a point.
Okay.
And all the costs be added into the loan.
Up to 135%.
Yep. And
here's a great one by John. Are other people allowed to be on the loan other than the spouse or, I mean, yeah, that'd be great. Is that, if
yes.
like the husband or wife is a vet, but the husband or wife is the other husband or wife is not, can they be on the loan?
Yeah, they can. You can actually have a non-occupant co-borrower, but there's a down payment because let's say now VA considers husband and wife as one if the veteran, but the non-vet, they don't consider that. So that would be, if husband and wife were buying with them, that would be three entities, the husband and wife for the veteran, the husband and the wife. So never do three because then VA will only approve a third of the loan for the veteran. They'll approve half the loan for the veteran with one co-borrower, and that would require a 12.5% down payment before you can use any non-veteran people on the loan outside of the veteran's spouse. Did I explain that where you can understand it?
Absolutely. I totally got that. Yep.
Cool.
Did that help? All right.
Bankruptcies, foreclosures, 2 years after a bankruptcy, and they must reestablish credit. Extenuating circumstances, the lowest I've done is 1 year. In Chapter 13, as long as they've been in it for 12 months, have made satisfactory payments, and have approval of the court. Jumbos, no BK in the past 7 years. So we have some investors that will actually do them after 2 years. So
I want to go back to the extenuating circumstances, because I think a lot of people pass over this, both for FHA and VA. And can you just touch on the extenuating circumstances? Because a lot of I've done a couple myself where it was an extenuating circumstance and they were able to get a loan due to their circumstance. You want to touch on that just so everybody on this call doesn't just pass over it and let it go.
Something that happened out of their control. In my case, it was a county sheriff that was shot in the line of duty. He was out on disability, and his wife developed cancer and had to give up her job. Well, they got, he went back to duty. She was on the road to recovery and went back to work. They got everything all cleared up within that 1 year, and VA had zero problem doing that. So it depends on what the circumstances are. You were laid off from your job, or you were on disability, or something happened that interrupted your income. Divorce is not and never will be a reason for that. Although it should be, because it's shattered some people. But now on foreclosures, VA is the only one that goes 2 years from the date of foreclosure. Awesome. Now, another thing, you have, let's say the veteran, it gets discharged in a bankruptcy, and the lender decides to sit on that before they foreclose for 2 or 3 or 4 years. VA will go by the date that they no longer had to make those payments and they vacated the house. If they vacated the house at that time, that starts the 2-year clock for VA. With FHA, the clock starts 3 years from the date they paid the claim. So if they discharge it in a BK and then the lender waited 3 years to file the claim, it will be 3 years from that date that FHA paid the claim before they'd be eligible for another FHA. VA, now FHA, it's 3 years from the date of a short sale. VA has no time frame from a short sale. VA considers it as a collection settle for less. So you don't have to wait any time. You could have a short sale last month and buy and get a VA loan this month. That's the only loan that you can do that with as well.
All right. Let's see.
All judgments must be paid in full at or prior to closing. It can be paid. A judgment can be paid as part of the closing because there'll be the CD will have a receipt showing that judgment was paid. So that way you won't have to have the satisfaction of judgment, but you will have the closing disclosure showing that it was paid. And that's acceptable.
John, Brett, this is pretty cool. So Brett just said, I'm closing one this week, 100% service-connected disability, and he's exempt from property taxes once he closes and gets the application approved from the taxing authority. Saves him $1,000 a month.
In many counties, that is the way it goes. Some counties, if you receive any disability, they will waive the property taxes. So yeah, that's I don't think saving property taxes is worth being that injured, but we owe these people a lot. Anything we can do for a veteran is always okay by me.
Absolutely. Some people are asking about rates and stuff, but if you guys I would just get with a lender that's fluent in VA. You like that word, John? Fluent in VA loans?
Yes. There are very few of us that speak VA, though.
Very few. I know. I just get with a VA, somebody that knows VA loans, and then if they don't know the answer, have them research it. I see some rate questions coming in, and do I qualify coming in, and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we got an advantage. My wife has been a VA underwriter for 36 years, so we have some interesting discussions in our household.
I'm sure. Here's
Absolutely.
a good one, man. Here's a good one. Disabled vet lives with granddaughter, wants to purchase. Interesting.
Okay, vet lives with granddaughter, wants to purchase a home.
Yep.
Fine. Granddaughter goes on the loan with him. They're going to have to put 12.5% down, but if he can qualify on his own, no problem.
Okay. 12.5% down if she goes on the loan. Okay.
If she goes on the loan, correct.
Yeah.
Now,
and there's a question about. Sorry, John. I'm sorry. There's a question about Chapter 13. It says, what if Chapter 13 has been discharged? It's probably past the year mark. So, unless they discharge it sooner. But I guess it's 12 months of satisfactory payments with court approval. You don't even have to be discharged. I believe, I don't know, it used to be FHA.
You can still be in 13 and get the loan. Yes.
Yeah, you can still be in 13 and get the loan, both VA and I believe FHA as well, as long as they have 13. And they got to get approval from the magistrate too, I believe.
From the court. Absolutely.
From the court,
but
yes, correct. Okay.
Here's the difference between VA and FHA, which is really weird. With FHA, you can actually get a loan if you're in a Chapter 13. But once it's been discharged, you have to wait 2 years. VA, there's no waiting period after it's been discharged.
Got it. And it's 2 years from the discharge date. And the discharge date is when it's recorded. So just check that on an FHA loan.
Correct.
Because it's not necessarily when it's done, it's when it's discharged. So.
Yeah, and normally your credit report will show date of discharge.
Correct.
Now, if you have rental properties and you've had them for at least 2 years, you have to have 3 months PITI in reserves for rental properties, not reserves for the one you're buying, just for your rental properties. And if you're going to rent your property that you're vacating, you don't need reserves on that. And we'll take 75% of the gross rent and offset your mortgage payment with that.
So let me just clarify. So if I own a home right now and I go, hey John, I want to move.
Turn it to a rental. Right.
Turn it into a rental. I can use 70%. So, and let's just say is it the market rent? Because obviously, or if I have a lease, I can use 75% of the gross rent.
If you have a lease, we're going to take 75% of the lease.
Got it. Cool.
we're going to offset the payment with that. And you're not going to be required, because it's your departing residence, to have the 3 months PITI.
Awesome. And is there a time limit that I got to live in the house before I can turn it into a rental?
Generally, VA, unless there's, again, extraordinary circumstances, considers it a year. Extraordinary circumstances could be I'm active duty military and I get deployed. Then I can rent my house. Can use the entitlement many times. There are no flip rules with VA. So if you guys work with flippers and they buy these properties, they have to wait the 90 days, but they can fix it up in a couple of weeks. They can sell it to a veteran without any restriction. And they don't even have to come up with a list of improvements they've made or anything else. All they need is a bona fide VA appraisal. Just has to make sense. VA feels if the guy made a great buy and fixed up and you sell it, hooray for him. That's the American way. That's what we do. We make good deals. We make our money. And so
how about this one? Maureen asked, if seller pays, there's some great questions here, man. I told you, you guys are smart. If seller pays funding fee, have you had any issues with QM?
No, the funding fee is going to be part of the 4% seller contributions. As long as they don't exceed 4% of their contributions, not including closing costs, they're fine.
Got it. Awesome.
Absolutely. There's one other thing. With FHA, if you're going to buy a home from a relative, if you have not lived in that home for 6 months, if you've not rented that for 6 months, you can only you have to put 15% down. You can't get the max FHA loan. VA has no arm's length transaction rules like that. You want to buy a home from a relative, your aunt, your uncle, your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, just get a bona fide VA appraisal and they don't care. So there's no arm's length transaction rules either.
Love it.
Now, sometimes, is there another question?
Yeah, so somebody wanted you to repeat the discharge. So on the discharge rules again for VA. 13 is, Chapter 7 is 2 years. Chapter 13 is,
bankruptcies.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
Chapter 7 is 2 years. Chapter 13, you can do it while you're in it if you've been in it at least a year. And after discharge, there's no time frame. Foreclosures are 2 years. Okay.
Yep, got it. Thank you.
Now, sometimes we'll have one that's really tight on the residual income. Again, we're just a couple of bucks short. What can we do? We go and we look at these compensating factors. Excellent credit history goes a long way. Conservative use of consumer debt, minimal consumer debt, long-term employment, significant liquid assets is huge with the VA. If you got assets, we'll forgive a lot of required dollars. Sizable down payment, significant equity if it's a refi, little or no payment shock is huge. High residual income, of course, then we don't need any of these because you got it. Low debt to income, you're going to have high residual if you have low debt. And tax benefits for home ownership. So if we can look and say, well, this person's going to end up with more, we'll go ahead and do it even if they're a little short of the dollars to, and we'll also look at the employment and say, hey, is this person going to be upwardly mobile, especially if they're active duty military, because we know they're going to be receiving promotions and increases.
Hey, here's a good one, John, and I know you speak to tons of agents across country. Eric is asking, what are some creative ways to find people that need a VA loan? Like, what are some marketing ideas that people can use?
Well, there are several. I would put, well, we're going to be doing, for one of these things, we're going to start doing a certification. So they're going to be SMP certified VA real estate agents and have that
Right.
something on your card that shows you're a certified VA. I would visit National Guard armories, reserve bases, start advertising in the paper that we work with veterans, and let the veterans know. Because I'm telling you, a lot of your competitors are shying away from this program because they don't understand it. A lot of the people in our industry shy away from it because they don't understand it. And again, it's 89% open to us. Only 11%
It's
of
crazy.
veterans have used it.
Crazy.
How many marketplaces
Yeah.
are
It's a huge
89%
open.
open to us?
I don't know of one. Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's not only incredible, it's sad, you know?
It's very sad. I was at the National VA Lenders Conference, and I was talking to all the brass at the VA, and I said, our goal should be to get that 11% up to 70%. Because let's face it, not everybody that ever went in the military will qualify to buy a home. But if we can get 70%, we'll be doing a very good service to the veterans. And anybody that ever puts a veteran into an FHA loan, that's horrible. I have found lenders, people that I've hired in the business, told me that they would take their veterans and put them into FHAs, and I didn't hire them. They came in looking for work, and because they didn't understand the VA program. Well, then you're too lazy to find out what this program can do, and you just taken some veterans and had them paying hundreds of dollars per month more on that mortgage insurance than they needed to. And that's just not right. That is not right. That's not what we should be doing to these people. We owe them a lot.
Hey, Joseph is asking a great question. How do we get a COE for a spouse of a deceased vet?
We have to submit what's called a Form 1817.
Okay.
And it will come back with no funding fee. Now, they have to be receiving dependency indemnity compensation, DIC, from the VA. And they'll have a letter stating that the VA has determined that your husband's or wife's death was service connected. So we get that, the 1817, and we submit it to VA, and they issue the certificate of eligibility in the surviving spouse's name. And if you have a problem with that, get a hold of me. Scott, you can get him my number, get a hold of me, and I'll take care of it for you.
Awesome. All right.
This is
Very cool.
Residual income. Now, let's see, you would be for loans over 80,000, Midwest, South. This chart,
we're still seeing underwrite. Oh, there we go. It just changed. Perfect. Okay, got it.
Okay. This chart, like one person in the Midwest only needs $441 per month left over. That's after federal tax, state tax, Social Security, and all that's his net effective income. If his ratio is over 41, he needs 20% more than that. That's not a lot of money. That is not a lot of money. For 2 people, 3 people, 4, 5, and then $80 for each, that's not a lot of money left over. And yet the VA has had the lowest foreclosure rate because these numbers work. Now, if somebody is retired military or active duty military, they have a 5% reduction in their required residual, because if there's a military installation anywhere near them, they have the ability to use the commissary and the base exchange, which reduces their cost of living. You know, hey, Scott, is there any way that the people on this call, you can email them a copy of this presentation?
Yeah. Actually, they're all going to get a copy of the recording and the PowerPoint. So, and a ton of people have asked. So, yep, you bet. 2
VA regional loan centers use this PowerPoint to train their people when they hire them.
Awesome. This is great, man. So what this chart's saying, just to clarify, is and just so you guys know, both from a lender and a realtor point of view, I think it pays to have somebody that's very well versed in the VA lingo. But what, like in the Midwest, if it's one person, you have to have $441 left over of your income. Two is 738, obviously, because there's more expenses, and then so on. Well, that's for loan amounts above 80,000. Was that correct?
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
And
okay.
Let's say you have a ratio, and I'm sure you've heard people tell you it's over 50 on the VA, we can't do it. I'm hearing that all over the country. Let's say you have a husband and wife buying, right? And they're at a 64 back end ratio, but they have like $1,200 or $1,300 left over for residual income. We're going to do that loan. It's way over the required 738 plus the 20% would be 860 or something like that, whatever. We're way over that, and we're going to go ahead and do that loan. Especially, if they've got decent credit, if their credit scores are in the 500, we're going to look at that.
Very nice.
Yep. Other than that,
all right.
It's really simple. Appraisals, they're ordered through the Veterans Information Portal, and the computer assigns the appraiser on a rotating basis. So we don't know who the computer is going to assign, but the second they assign it, we have all the information on the appraiser. We can talk to the appraiser as opposed to conventional or FHA. And all appraisals are now under USPAP rules. So VA, FHA, and any federal appraisal, and USPAP stands for Uniform Standard Professional Appraisal Practices. And that takes precedence. There's no more VA rules, FHA rules, Fannie Mae rules. They all have to follow the same rules. And you don't see many repairs on VAs anymore. Most of them are as is. Repairs noted must be completed and inspected. And repairs can be paid for by the borrower. They always could. Repairs have always been negotiable between buyer and seller. So if you have a buyer that got a buy and the seller says, I'm not doing anything, buyer says, I don't want to lose this house, so I'll pay for it, charge it to the buyer at close, not a problem.
Very nice.
Okay, what do you need to know? Buyers must occupy the property, no second home, no investment, except if you already have a VA that you moved out and turned it into a rental, you can actually do an IRRL on the non-owner occupied. That's the only non-owner occupied you can do with VA.
Wow, no kidding. Okay, yeah, that's awesome.
And veterans may own other properties as long as subject property is owner occupied. Non-occupant co-borrowers are permitted, as I said, the 12.5% down. Non-traditional credit is allowed on a case-by-case basis because VA does not recognize FICOs. Condos must be on the VA approved condo list. There are no spot approvals, but getting them approved is pretty easy. We at SMP do condo project approvals. I actually do them, and they take about 10 days to 2 weeks. And once it's approved, it's on there forever. It doesn't expire, and you don't need any HOA cert or anything else. All you need is a VA appraisal.
Very nice.
Yeah,
I'm surprised. Only 10 days to 2 weeks, huh?
Yep,
that's awesome.
That's it. Well, it's done electronically now.
Okay. All right.
You don't have to submit all those big, heavy old forms. It just send them electronically. And
couple questions coming in about the inspections. One is some more info on such as the Section 1 mandatory for seller to take care of. And then another one said, can the buyer pay for Section 1 repairs? If there is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Any repairs, even on termite.
The buyer can do it.
Yes.
Okay.
Was there another question? Or,
Nope, that was it. That was kind of one and the same.
okay. Termite clearance is required, except on Earls. There's no termite on an Earl. Where in the areas where they are required, there are some areas of the country where termite reports are not required. Then you're fine. That's all set by the Regional Loan Center of jurisdiction. Cavers, we do a cavers alert, and if there's any federal debt, of course that federal debt has to be cleared before we can do a loan. But if we're doing a VA loan and a guy had an FHA years ago that went into foreclosure, and he has an FHA cavers claim, we ignore that. VA ignores the cavers claim for FHA because FHA only uses that as a time clock. There's no federal debt on an FHA foreclosure because that's picked up by the mutual mortgage insurance that they paid every single month. So FHA uses cavers as to start the clock on their 3 years. So if there's ever a cavers alert on your borrower because it's FHA, we ignore that and we'll go ahead and do the VA loan without a problem.
Awesome.
Okay. Summary of advantages: no down payment, max seller contributions 4% plus closing costs. So, and that's just seller contributions. You can still have lender credits and you can still have broker credits, anything like that. Gift funds allowed, no minimum reserve requirements. Makes sense underwriting. We underwrite it, and our underwriters go through intense training on these. And I am part of a loan committee. If we have one that's really tough, we send it through a loan committee and find out if there's a way we can do it. We try and do every one of them. Not limited to first-time home buyers, fixed rate, assumable. National Guard, reservists, they're qualified. Manufactured homes, okay. Quick closings. I mean, I think last month the fastest one we closed was 18 days. And we underwrite them ourselves. We don't send them to VA. Only certain ones have to go to VA. And we do very few of those. So it is a great program.
It's an amazing program. I'm just honored to have her met you. I got a couple more questions here for the top of the hour. Maureen asked, if ratio is high 50s or 60 and does not go through AUS, is it manual underwrite?
Yes, but manual underwrite is no big deal for VA. FHA, it's a big deal. It's an automatic audit. But the truth of the matter is, VA really doesn't look at the results of the AUS anyway. They look at the underwriters. It's called a 6393 loan analysis worksheet. And that's what they go by. So almost every VA is really technically a manual underwrite. So no, manual underwrites don't hurt us in the least. There's no difference. They don't change ratios. They don't change residual. It's not an automatic audit with VA. VA would prefer a manual underwrite because they know that the underwriter has at least looked at it. They're not sure half the times on the AUS because they're just going by the AUS findings. So no, manual underwrites are, and oftentimes even with good loans, DU doesn't like it for certain reasons. So we do a lot of manuals.
Does Section 1 need to be cleared before loan approval?
No, before closing.
Of the repairs? Okay. Before loan approval. Like, do they have to have the repairs done? I guess Section 1 would be the repairs. Is that what somebody was saying?
I don't see why we would hold up loan approval for termite work. Termite work should be a condition of close. Should be a prior to close, not a prior to approval.
And somebody's asking what CAVERS stands for again. I don't know what that whole term stands for, but
let me tell you in a second.
That's a tough one.
It's an internet. Let me see. I'll actually look it up here, guys.
I'm looking it up too. So it stands for pronounced.
God bless Google.
CAVERS. Yeah, Google, man. Thank God for Google. Let's see. What is it? What is CAVERS? Credit alert, interactive voice response
credit alert,
system.
internet. Yeah.
Interactive voice response system. So.
Yep.
All right. All right, guys.
And
John, man, dude, yeah, I can't. Any final? Thank you so much for putting this together, man. I know we're at the top of the hour, and out of respect, I just want to respect everybody's time here. But, man, I can't thank you enough for helping our veterans to get into homes, and moving that needle just a little bit each year. I think is great, and making it, making people aware of what you can do with this amazing program is even more important. So, thank you for being who you are, and I appreciate your drive and tenacity to just keep this thing, to keep pushing along with this, man. It's just it's really, really cool to see.
well, thanks, Scott. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you folks that were on this. And just remember what the veterans do for us. And
Absolutely, man.
as a Vietnam vet, when we got home, we were treated very poorly. We were actually treated like dirt. And I love to see how these veterans are treated now, and the respect. They're finally getting the respect that they deserve. And part of our way to respect them is to go out and help. If I were in real estate, my business card would read Housing America's Children. We'll help these veterans and their families get into their home. Man, I'm telling you, they're loyal too. I can tell you, you will get referrals from these people. Anybody that worked with vets before, I'm sure you realize that you will be getting some referrals from these guys, and they're great to work with, and it's just a great loan. You get to understand this, you're going to be so far ahead of your competitors, and it can really enhance your income. It can absolutely make your year. Learn this program, and I know I'm eternally grateful to our company who has adopted the VA program and put a priority on the VA program. Our founder is a veteran, and so it's a great place to be. It's great to work with, and Scott, again, thank you for inviting me to do this, and I hope to see all of you in person.
Yeah, amen. And you probably will, as much as you travel, man. You travel more than anybody I've met. So thank you for continuing to just push forward and educate people on the VA loan and how easy it is and how awesome it is. And all right, thank you again for being here, man. I appreciate your time. I know it's important. I hear your phone going off nonstop, and I know you're helping people every single day. So I appreciate that. Hey guys, thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out with us the day after the long weekend. Hope you're same time, same place next week right here. Got a great class planned. Have a great week. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you guys on the web. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.